And hello, everyone. I'm Kira Phillips. Thanks so much for streaming with us this morning. Well, today the Supreme Court is set to decide on some of the most divisive cases in decades: abortion, gun rights, and the death penalty. Demonstrators out in full force across the country rallying for abortion rights. The court's conservative majority has the potential to roll back 50 years of abortion rights, including Roe versus Wade. ABC News Live Prime anchor Lindsay Davis with her exclusive one-on-one with Baby Roe.
My whole thinking is that, oh God, everybody's going to hate me because everyone's going to blame me for abortion being legal.
What kind of weight was that burden for you to carry that for so many years?
I feel that it was always hard for me to form relationships with people because I felt like I was always holding something back. I still carry that, and I probably always will.
You will not want to miss this interview. You can see more of Lindsay's exclusive one-on-one tonight on ABC News Live Prime, 7 p.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific, and later tonight on Nightline. The family of 19-year-old Maya Marcano vowing to continue their fight for justice after authorities believe they found her body in Orlando, Florida. She disappeared more than a week ago. Her family and their attorney believe negligence played a role in her death. More than 140,000 gallons of crude oil have poured into the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Southern California, shutting down beaches and threatening wildlife. The pipeline leak appears to have stopped after scooping nearly 1,300 gallons of oil, but it could take weeks, even months, to assess the full damage. And the race is on to clear that water and those iconic beaches and save wildlife that's already in danger. For more now, I want to bring in Orange County Supervisor Katrina Foley. We are hearing the pipeline has stopped leaking. That's good news. What's the latest on that?
Hello, good morning, and thank you for having us here. We have been monitoring the situation constantly. The pipeline has been what they call capped, and the valve turned off. So we hope that that will prevent any further leakage. However, these are old pipes, and we still don't know the extent of the damage. But we're all hands on deck here in Orange County, working with our federal, state, county, city, and local officials, as well as the responsible party.
And this is my home state, and it breaks my heart just to see the pictures that I'm looking at right there. Katrina, tell us how this effort is going to go forward with regard to cleanup. What exactly will be used, and you know, do you have faith that you will be able to move quickly?
Oh, we have moved mountains in the last 24 hours. We, at the county here, we have deployed our personnel to build berms to prevent the oil from seeping into our protected areas. We have 3 protected marshes that maintain ecological habitat that we've built up in a preserve for many years. And so we're working around the clock to protect those areas. We also have begun our wildlife rescue and cleanup effort, and we need some help for our wildlife recovery. We're asking for N95 masks, Tyvek suits, red rubber feeding tools, collapsible cardboard carrying boxes so that we can carry the animals that are being impacted and covered with oil, and we can clean off that poison from them. I'm going to be touring the Wildlife Habitat Center in Huntington Beach at 10 a.m. and we'll learn more about what their needs are then. But we are underway helping to clean up for the wildlife, for also the coastline. It's moving to Laguna Beach. I'm waiting to hear from our Coast Guard as to whether or not it's actually going to hit the shores of Laguna Beach today or not.
Wow, some of the most beautiful places there in Southern California. And, you know, Katrina, we're seeing these devastating images, even some that you shared on Twitter. We're taking a look at them now of just the birds and other wildlife covered in oil. What more have you seen today? And how is this already impacting the ecosystem? And what's your biggest concern of further impact as the minutes and the days go by?
Well, our greatest concern, of course, is that the oil continues to seep into our protected wetlands and then also into the Santa Ana River Trail, which we really don't want that to happen. And then as we move throughout the day today, I'm going to be touring the coast with our harbor patrol and to try to see the extent along the coast, along the shoreline. We are just really concerned about how long the cleanup will take. And so we are really demanding that all resources be used to get this cleaned up as soon as possible. Our community is all about the beaches and all about the ocean. And we learned yesterday, late in the evening, I think I got the message about 10 p.m., that the fisheries are now closed and that fishing is going to be stopped. This is lobster season. So many, many impacts. The impacts are just growing and we're continuing to assess.
Well, we will stay in touch with you about this broken pipeline, how it happened, more on the investigation and the efforts moving forward. Orange County Supervisor Katrina Foley, just breaks my heart. We will talk more. Thanks so much for joining us. I know it's been a busy day.
Thank you, and please help us spread the word. We do want to make sure that those who are responsible for this are held accountable.
We are on it. Thanks, Katrina. We're also on top of the U.S. Supreme Court. It began its new session this morning as the court faces one of the most consequential terms in years. And it's set to take up cases on abortion, gun control, and the death penalty, vaccine mandates, and even more. Senior national correspondent Terry Moran joining me live there from the Supreme Court. We were talking earlier about the decisions before the court, what they'll be discussing. Terry, already hearing some protests behind you. What's the feel? What's the vibe right now?
Well, everything is at stake, really, in this term on the issue of abortion, of course. Still, 50 years after Roe versus Wade, maybe the most controversial subject in American life. And I want to show you this loud but not particularly large protest. If you've got a microphone and a pair of speakers, you can really make a difference. But there's no question that this is the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this hugely divisive issue in American life. The right to choose, as some have it, the right to life as others. What's at stake in the case out of Mississippi? Mississippi banned all abortions after 15 weeks of gestation. That was a deliberate attempt to get this court to overrule Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade allows women the right to choose to have an abortion in America under the liberty that we are all guaranteed under the 14th Amendment to our Constitution. That decision really one of the most reviled, controversial in American history. This is a new court that will consider Mississippi's effort to get them to overturn Roe versus Wade. 3 Trump justices, really Chief Justice John Roberts, who has been in the middle on some of this, now in the minority. It's all up to those 3 Trump justices, Justices Kavanaugh, Barrett, and Gorsuch, and Clarence Thomas, and Justice Alito, to decide whether or not women will continue to have that right to choose abortion in America, or whether the court will allow states to ban abortion, as they have de facto allowed Texas to do so. Really, everything on the table right now on the issue of abortion. That case comes up in December. This crowd will be tiny compared to what will happen the day that comes down.
So as this busy session, I hope you can hear me okay. The music is quite loud, Terry. I admire your ability to focus as always. Death penalty, gun control, vaccine mandates, a lot on the docket. What else are you watching?
Well, that gun control case, let me see if this one helps. I'm not sure if we can tune that out a little bit. But that gun control case, the state of New York severely restricts people's ability to carry firearms in public. You need a special permit to carry firearms. Well, this court years ago in a case out of Chicago said the right to bear arms is a fundamental right guaranteed by the Second Amendment, but they left a lot of questions unanswered. They did say in that opinion by Justice Antonin Scalia, the late Justice Scalia, that states will have leeway. States and localities will have leeway. Some restrictions are constitutional. It's not a carte blanche to do anything you want with a weapon. And so at the end of the day, this court will have to decide, do you have a constitutional right not just to have a firearm, but to carry it in public, even if the state of New York would say otherwise for the public safety in that state. That's a big case. And then there are cases on religious liberty, the funding of religious schools through the public treasury in the state of Maine. Some rural schools don't have, rural districts have no public high schools. Parents there want to know if they can use public money to send their children to religious high schools. That's a big one. All kinds of big decisions coming down this year, and really with a strong conservative majority, liberals are bracing for what they consider the worst.
Our Terry Moran there at the Supreme Court. We'll be talking throughout the day and, of course, at 3 p.m. as well. Terry, thanks so much. All right, coming up, starting today, New York public school employees must have at least one shot of the COVID vaccine. When we come back, the latest on the battle over those mandates as the U.S. hits another grim milestone in this pandemic. Get vaccinated or face the consequences. Starting today, New York public school employees who show up for work must have at least their first vaccine shot or face a possible suspension. 93% of public school employees have gotten vaccinated as the U.S. COVID death toll reaches new heights and a devastating number. Ariel Reshef has the latest.
That grim milestone in the pandemic, 700,000 Americans losing their lives to COVID-19 months after the vaccine became widely available. And now the debate about vaccine mandates raging from coast to coast.
Throughout years and years, decades, we have made it a requirement for children to get into schools to get different types of vaccines. So when people treat this as something novel and terrible, it isn't.
In New York, today, the deadline for roughly 148,000 school employees to get the shot or face suspension. California becoming the first state to announce it will require COVID-19 vaccines for students and teachers. Reaction among parents mixed.
I definitely do not agree with it, and I will for sure pull my kids out of school.
If it's mandatory to get into school, then of course, because we want them to continue school.
But the latest concentration of COVID-related deaths includes more young people than ever before.
We told them she never had any heart issues.
Nicole Sperry, a mother from Virginia who lost her 10-year-old daughter Teresa to COVID.
What I want is people to take this serious. Wear your mask. It doesn't take much to show that you care.
Just heartbreaking. And Kira, there are some signs of progress. Hospital admissions and daily new cases down 30% last month. But Dr. Fauci says we are making progress against the current surge, but many more people must get vaccinated to prevent another one. Kira.
Ariel, thanks so much. I'd like to bring in now physician at Stanford Children's Health, Dr. Alok Patel, for more on the pandemic. Dr. Tappell, always great to see you, especially when talking about all the changes taking place, which seems to happen on a regular basis. The number that keeps changing, yes, unfortunately, 700,000 Americans now have lost their lives to COVID. What does this milestone, mean for us in the United States at this point?
Kira, this milestone is specifically heartbreaking and causing a lot of frustration, rightfully so, because I believe actually you and I had talked around the time when we hit 600,000 deaths. That was about June 15th. So in the past 3.5 months, vaccines have been widely available to all Americans in all 50 states. And here we are with another 100,000 deaths. And it just tells us that there's two conversations happening right now in this country. One's about saving lives, and the other one is about this push for personal freedom and wanting, medical freedom and trying to do everything people can to get back to normalcy, when in reality, if we look at these statistics, about 40% of these recent deaths in the last 100,000 were people under the age of 65. We're seeing more young people get exposed and dying. And so, we have to really look at what's happening in the future now. Vaccines are already available. The Pfizer vaccine has full FDA approval. These are the things that we thought would turn the tide. So what are we going to do to prevent more deaths heading into winter, which inevitably will happen, but maybe at a slower rate, hopefully?
So today, as we mentioned, is the deadline for roughly 148,000 school employees in New York to get their shot or now face suspension. Then you've got California. It announced it'll require COVID vaccines for teachers and students. You know, these vaccine mandates are getting a lot of mixed reaction from parents, doctors, the community. As a doctor, what's your take on this?
Well, my take, first of all, is that these mandates are nothing new. And I cannot stress that enough, because they are this COVID-19 mandate is the first mandate we've seen in more than a decade. And it's getting thrust into this political spotlight where people are fighting over it. Where, as a doctor, I will tell you that there are 10 mandates required of children, I should say 10 required vaccines required of kids in the state of California to go into childcare and K through 12. And COVID-19 as a vaccine mandate is just following under the same guidelines, that we're doing everything we can to prevent the spread of this. And here's what happens with mandates is a mandate is not necessarily going to convince those who are hesitant to run out and get the shot. It's doing that to some, not only teachers, but also parents, people working for federal jobs. But Kira, what it's doing is causing people to have a conversation, which is a good thing. Parents I talk to were having conversations with their social circles, with their pediatricians, saying like, hey, okay, now I'm forced to get the shot. I was on the fence earlier. Talk to me about it. And that's actually working. And when we say there's a mixed response, what I would counter and say is, yes, there's a mixed response on media. But the vast majority of people are still going out and getting the shot in these groups, with over 90% of teachers and principals in New York State having gotten fully vaccinated. The minority who are against it just have a very loud megaphone.
So the booster shot now, let's talk about this. It still is causing a lot of confusion, who's eligible, and when to get it. So help us clear things up. How should those who got the Pfizer vaccine know when or if they should get a booster? And then lay out Moderna and J&J for us.
Well, we're still waiting on data. And we're still on the full approval for, I should say, the emergency use authorization for Moderna and J&J, with J&J just announcing recently they're going to submit data as well. And so for the millions of people who got those 2 shots, we're still in a little bit of a holding pattern. But regarding Pfizer, we know that those who are at increased risk because of their job, increased exposure, those who are above the age of 65, or anyone with an underlying medical condition is eligible to get a booster. And you really have to think about this on an individual basis, because, Kira, those are broad categories. So I totally understand why people out there are taking a step back and saying, oh my gosh, am I eligible? Chat with your healthcare professional. And if you have any concerns that you may be in one of those 3 groups, chances are you're in one of those 3 groups, and you should run out and get a booster just to keep up your level of protection, but also to, just really ensure that you're not spreading it to anyone else, should you get symptomatic. And for people out there who aren't yet eligible for a booster, remember, this vaccine is very efficient at protecting you from hospitalization or death. When we're talking about a booster shot, we talk about breakthrough infections, we're talking about symptomatic COVID-19. We're not necessarily talking about deaths. And that last 100,000 deaths that we've seen since June, the CDC estimates that only about 3,000 were in vaccinated individuals. So booster or not, you still have great protection.
And I like carefully placed over your right shoulder there, your thick book on vaccines. We're glad to know you are constantly being read up. Dr. Alok Patel, physician at Stanford Children's Health. Always great to see you. Thanks, Alok.
Evidence-based always. Thank you.
Always. Coming up, former President Trump. His press secretary, Stephanie Grisham, well, she's speaking out about her time in the White House. When we come back, why she says she went from a loyal insider to one of the most famous or infamous presidents to one of his fiercest critics. And welcome back. You are watching ABC News Live. Well, one of the ultimate Trump insiders is now speaking out in a pretty scathing new book. Stephanie Grisham was the White House press secretary and chief of staff to former First Lady Melania Trump. Now, her new book is detailing what she saw in the Trump White House, her biggest regret, and why she's breaking away from the former president and First Lady. Juju Chang has more.
Stephanie Grisham's journey to being a close confidant of the Trumps spans 6 years, from campaign wrangler to White House press secretary and Melania's chief of staff, at times bringing her disturbing news.
You were the one who had to tell Melania about the former porn star Stormy Daniels' lawsuit. What was that moment like?
That was tough. Her reaction on that phone call was very okay. It wasn't surprise, it wasn't anger. She was very stoic.
Her derisive codename was Rapunzel.
Yes. It made sense to me that the Secret Service dubbed her Rapunzel. She did not like to leave. She stayed upstairs a lot. But yeah, the Free Melania hashtag, I think, was people hoping that she wanted to leave. The truth is, she liked it there.
In her book, I'll Take Your Questions Now, Grisham says staffers used a secret nickname to mock first daughter Ivanka and husband Jared.
So in the East Wing, they were ridiculed as the interns.
Correct. We called them the interns because as interns usually are, they come into places and think they know everything, and they have a lot to learn.
Grisham also discusses one of her biggest regrets.
I wish I would have spoken out more about COVID, about our response to COVID, about that first disastrous Oval Office address to the nation, which was not about COVID or educating our public. It was about having him look presidential for re-election. I wish I would have told him he needs to wear a mask.
Do you think that misinformation or dishonesty cost lives?
Yes.
With COVID?
Yes. I will be forever, I will always think that, and I don't know that you can ever forgive yourself fully for being a part of that.
Grisham now lives in a quiet part of Kansas, far away from the whirlwind of Trump world.
You mentioned in the book, you're quite open about the sort of dishonesty that was permeating the White House. There are your critics who say, if that's the case, how can we believe you now? What do you say to them?
Because I am so honest in the book, I spare no one. I don't make myself look great in this book. I'm telling my truth, and I'm hoping that people will see what it was like so we cannot repeat history. I am terrified of him running for president in 2024. I don't think he is fit for the job.
And George Stephanopoulos actually had the first sit-down interview with Stephanie Grisham after Juju did that piece. Take a listen.
The book is kind of a brutal read. You detail 4 years of toxicity, abuses of power, a culture of casual dishonesty, but you stayed until the final 2 weeks. I mean, the inevitable first question is, what took you so long?
Yeah, that's a fair question, and it's a complicated question. I went into the Trump campaign a true believer and a true loyalist, and then
But you had actually worked against him in the primaries, hadn't you?
No, I had worked in very, very early. I'd worked on a couple of minor campaigns, but it was when the field was at 15 or 16, so I hadn't worked against him at all. And when I worked his first rally, I was absolutely impressed by the crowd and the reaction that he got, and I liked the way that he truly was giving a voice to people who felt forgotten. As I went through my years, I spent a huge amount of time on the East Wing, and so I was almost shielded sometimes from a lot of the toxic nature of the West Wing and the administration. When I went to the West Wing is when I actually started to see what it was really like, and I regretted that decision immediately.
You're likely to go down in history as the only White House press secretary who never held a press conference. Did President Trump order you not to hold briefings?
Yes, when we discussed me taking the job, he had already suspended the briefings for about 6 months under Sarah. And he said he didn't think we needed any more briefings. He spoke to the press 2 or 3 times a day directly. So then my job was going to be to work more behind the scenes with print, with regional and local.
But you were talking about this culture of casual dishonesty at the White House. So you were, as press secretary, even if you weren't giving briefings, enabling that culture, weren't you?
Yes, I was, and I've reflected on that, and I regret that, and especially now watching him and so many people push the false election narrative, I now want to, in whatever way I can, educate the public about the behaviors within the White House, because it does look like he's going to try to run in 2024.
You believe he will?
I didn't at first, but I'm starting to believe he will. I mean, he's clearly the front runner in the Republican Party. Everybody's showing their fealty to him. He's on his revenge tour for, people who dared to vote for impeachment. And I want to just warn people that once he takes office, if he were to win, he doesn't have to worry about re-election anymore. He will be about revenge. He will probably have some pretty draconian policies that go on. There were conversations a lot of times that people would say, that'll be the second term, that'll be the second term, meaning we won't have to worry about, you know, a re-election.
You write that you were concerned about a young press aide who was getting inappropriate attention and comments from President Trump. Should you have done more to protect her?
I don't know if I could have. There's not an HR department at the White House where you can go and say, hey, the President of the United States is acting inappropriately. I didn't feel comfortable talking to
go to the Chief of Staff.
I was just going to say, I didn't feel comfortable talking to Mark Meadows. I don't believe he would have done anything. So I did the best I could in terms of never letting her be alone with him in the cabin. I tried to keep her off trips as often as I could. I did the best I could, I think, in that environment.
You worked for the First Lady as well, her Chief of Staff. She's put out with a new statement overnight saying the author is desperately trying to rehabilitate her tarnished reputation by manipulating and distorting the truth about Mrs. Trump. Ms. Grisham is a deceitful and troubled individual who doesn't deserve anyone's trust.
I expected that. I expect more. This is right out of their playbook. When they don't like the message, they're going to destroy the messenger. I know. I was part of doing that sometimes. So I notice she's not denying anything fully in the book just yet. I think she knows that I have a lot of receipts to show that I'm being fully honest. So I expected that, and I'm sure that there will be more to come, probably a lawsuit or two or three or four.
Was it a mistake to work for President Trump?
Yes.
Why'd you do it?
Like I said in the beginning, watching how people reacted to him, and I do believe he gave voice to a lot of people who did feel forgotten. But I think that many of us, myself included, got into that White House and got heady with power and became really, we didn't think about serving the country anymore. It was about surviving in there. And he loved it. He loved the chaos, and it's bad, and obviously hindsight is 2020. I have no illusions right now that people are going to suddenly think I'm some hero. That's not what this is about. This has not been a fun process for me. I mean, even just with the statement you just read, the left doesn't like me, the right doesn't like me, but I have gone back to basics, and I have my family, and I have my friends, and people can, you know, take this book for what it is. It's honest, and that's all I can say.
You write about the president's relationship with Vladimir Putin. Talk about one meeting in Osaka, Japan, where he told Putin, okay, I'm going to act a little tougher with you for a few minutes, but that's just for the cameras. And you also talk about a conversation you had with Fiona Hill, a Russian expert who's going to be on our program later this morning, where she said that she suspected that Vladimir Putin had planted an attractive translator in the meeting to distract the president?
Yes, yeah, she did. She pointed that out to me, and I mean, I actually kind of felt stupid that I didn't notice that, because sure enough, the president actually paid attention to her and spoke to her, and I'd never seen him do that, and I never saw him do it again. Yeah.
How do you explain why the president was so placating of President Putin?
I got the feeling, this is my opinion, but I got the feeling that he wanted to impress dictators. I think he almost admired how tough they were. I write about a situation in the book where we were in a meeting with Turkish President Erdogan, and he stopped in the middle of the meeting and said, Stephanie, who do you think is tougher, President Xi or Erdogan, who was sitting right there? And, you know, I think he just always was impressed by how tough they were and worried about impressing them over, you know, our allies.
President Trump is sitting right here, right now. What would you say to him?
This is awkward. I don't have anything to say to him. I would ask him not to run in 2024.
Stephanie Grisham, thanks very much.
And our thanks to George and Stephanie for that interview. Well, that does it for us this hour. I'm Kira Phillips. Thanks so much for joining us. Remember, ABC News Live is here for you all day with the latest news, context, and analysis. I'll see you back here at 3 p.m. Eastern with Terry Moran. Have a great day.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.